Looking for all the latest tips, tricks, updates of what's going on in the recruiting industry, check out the Digital Recruiter Sunday night newsletter. I am not here to blow up your inbox. I don't have enough time to create an email every single day. I once a week send you impactful, a big thing that I've learned this week or realized from working with hundreds of recruiters, owning an agency myself. I'm in the trenches every day like you are, and I'm sharing everything that I'm seeing every Sunday, from content, from automation, from how to get better clients, how to find candidates quicker, how to grow your team, how to hire people, everything in between. The link is in the comments. Sign up today, or you can go to my LinkedIn profile, Clark Wilcox. It's the first link on my feature section. You can sign up there. It's all free. So you get all the tips, everything that you need, free in your inbox every Sunday night. Sign up today. All right. Today I am joined by Mr. Doug Burris, the founder of DBI2 Consulting, does TA consulting for startups and growth stage companies, longtime recruiter, Kansas fan, definitely not a Missouri fan, as I've been learning. I'm great to have him on today. We're gonna talk some recruiting. We're gonna talk candidate experience. We're gonna talk LinkedIn and branding and a whole maybe the fax machine recruiting error days. We'll see. So, Doug, appreciate you being here, man.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Likewise, likewise. Well, let's give people a little bit of background, right? And as we kind of were joking off air, how did you get started or come to be in the recruiting world?
Yeah, great question. So I grew up in and around it. My father was a recruiter and had his own firm for years and years and years. So I spent a lot of time in the office and bouncing around with him to different meetings when I was just a young man, and it just kind of grew up in the business. Uh, Went to University of Kansas, Rock Chalk, and graduated. Started in a career in sales. And my second job in sales was asked by the branch manager. I was selling a thing called pagers, which a lot of our audience probably
Oh
will
yeah.
not remember what a pager is. We needed to hire a couple more salespeople. He asked me to do some interviews, and for a month, I spent more time recruiting than I did selling pagers. That's not good for commissions, um, but loved it. And I kind of felt like, okay, I'll just go to what I know best and love, and that really started it. Did some small agency in the temporary labor, industrial labor space for a little while. Did corporate stuff with, I'm in Kansas City, with Sprint Telecommunications, did some work in large engineering companies. But really, my journey truly changed about 12 years ago, where I was blessed beyond belief to land a job as the first human resources and talent acquisition person for an education technology startup here in Kansas City. Really got introduced to the startup world, the growth stage world, fell in love, saw the high impact of every hire in a small company, and really changed the trajectory from there. And here I am today, still doing it. So I kind of grew up in the business and never got away from it.
I love that. I don't hear too often people actually growing up in recruiting. We're going to hear probably a lot more of it 15, 20 years from now, because the industry kind of blew up, obviously with the internet age.
Yep.
So did you
To
ever
your
work?
point, I don't know if
Yeah.
I've ever come across a person ever that says, I'm going to school, I'm going to college, I want to be a recruiter. I think most of us fall into it one way or the other.
Yeah.
I just happened to be around it as I was growing up. So
No, absolutely. So did you ever like work with your dad at the same agency as your dad, or you guys
I did
never?
not. I
Yeah.
did not. No. Went off to school and graduated from KU in '93, and he had decided enough with this business after 20
Yeah.
years, and he started pursuing some other entrepreneurial interests. So
Uh,
grew up around it, but never worked with him side by side.
Gotcha. So, what was it like when you kind of got into it? Like, was he just like, "What are you doing?" All
No.
that. Was he excited for you? And then what's he thought of like the changes since he
Yeah.
left and you entered?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now like what was his perspective on all
Yeah,
that?
no, great
Yeah,
question. So, I grew up with his clients,
yeah,
Hallmark cards and various different companies that are in Kansas City were his clients. So as a young man, uh, going to a couple of meetings, listening to him present client or candidates, sorry, gathering job descriptions, that kind of stuff. His clients became his friends. And
Yeah.
so um, those were some of my very early mentors
Yeah.
when I was at KU and thinking about getting a business degree and then thinking, okay, maybe I want to do this. Learning from them what that business was like from the corporate side and the agency side. Um, it, when I was around that early business, people were mailing U.S. Postal Service resumes to him, faxing resumes.
Yeah.
That was bleeding edge technology, is being able to fax a resume to a client. Um, so prior to LinkedIn, prior to Career Builder, prior to the job boards, it was running ads in newspapers, and people would mail resumes to you, and hardcore recruiting of navigating your way through a directory at a company to, quote unquote, headhunt talent out of it and that kind of stuff. That's where I learned the business. That was the norm for me. And then as I got into this, and then this thing called LinkedIn came around, and all of a sudden you had access to all these people, let alone where we are with social media today. So I'm old enough to say that I've seen really that evolution of that hardcore headhunting now up to, posting jobs and the Zip recruiters of the world and networking LinkedIn every day. So
Yeah.
I feel very blessed to have that perspective in the business.
Well, yeah, and in our conversation, it's kind of been apparent because there's a lot of, I don't know, taking for granted when you call entitlement or whatever else of like the tools that are available today. And I will raise my hand in that as well. I try to have the humility to at least respect how fortunate we are for all this. I mean, I started also in light industrial staffing in 2013, and that was quote unquote the old school, right, of that decade and early part of this century. And there was
Yeah,
no LinkedIn. I didn't have any LinkedIn connections until 2020.
right.
And I had 150, I think, and that was most of them I probably had after Aerotech or like a day of pressing connect. You know what I mean? Before
Yeah,
I started using automation and really building that network, and it's a complete cheat code. Which has been pretty cool, but sometimes you can miss out on the fundamentals. I've seen really tech savvy people get into recruiting, and technically they're sound with their email, with their calls, and their lists and everything else, but they don't have they don't have the art down. They have the science down, but they don't have the art of recruiting down, and that is where the magic is.
hmm
And that's what you got to grow up with, seeing your dad do that, and all that piece of it. And what I want to ask you from that is, did you? I'm talking digital, but I want to get back to this because I'm dying to know about this. Was there any training you had in sales in the beginning of your career that kind of contradicted what you saw your dad do effectively?
I don't think so.
No?
That's a great question. That's a great question.
Yeah.
Um, at the end of the day, recruiting, in my opinion, is sales, right? There's so many aligned processes and skills and behaviors you have to have in both sides of it, whether it is identifying a particular market or talent pool,
Yeah.
identifying the decision makers or the proper candidates within that pool of humans. Um, it's doing the discovery, it's doing the networking, it is identifying on the recruiting side, we call it discovery, right?
Yeah.
It's identifying with a candidate or an applicant that you're speaking with, what are their motivators?
Yeah.
What are they seeking if they're open to a new opportunity? It's same thing on sales. It's doing that discovery. Do you have a challenge or a pain in your business that I can help solve with this software, or this widget, or whatever? And then the true sales piece, in my opinion, comes into, okay, Steve, right? We'll just make up somebody named Steve. Your background aligns with what my client is looking for. Now let me tell you a little bit more about what my client company does, right? This is what they sell, to whom they sell it. This is what they provide from a software perspective. This is the infrastructure it's built on. Whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Then you're appealing to their motivations, whether it be financial, culture, geolocation, they're geeking out about a market, whatever it is, it's still sales. It is still the serendipity of aligning. I've got the right product or solution to solve a problem your company's having. I've got a company that's seeking talent that aligns with your experience that you're seeking in compensation or culture or whatever it is. So I wouldn't say that he would challenge the way I approached it. I think I learned so much from him that it is a human game. It's
Yeah.
a human game. And I'll try not to soapbox this too much, but it is truly serendipity. It is nuance. It is a role with a company with a service or a solution that finds a human that is the place in their life where they're ready to make a change. And those things come together at the right time
Yeah.
with, just the United States, right? 330 plus million people, millions of employers, and through the recruiting process, that initial screen happened on the right day. That candidate was in the right mood. They checked their LinkedIn, the
Yeah.
inbox on the right day. So that kind of to dovetail back to where you were, that yes, it was that searching and that calling and that cold calling and that newspaper advertisements, that kind of stuff. In some respects, the technology gives us greater opportunity to connect with a wider pool of people.
Yep.
However, LinkedIn is a social network. Career Builder is a job board, but there is a social network component. Indeed, there's a social network component to that. If candidates or people that are interested or maybe interested in finding a job aren't checking LinkedIn the way they are on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Snap, whatever,
Yeah.
those connections are going to get missed. And I'll give you a great anecdote on that. We've all had this happen at some point or another. I reached out to a young lady 4 years ago. She replied to me Sunday.
Yeah.
And the message was, I'm so sorry I missed this. 4 years.
That's like 2 Olympics have happened since then.
Right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
and in my brain, I was like, interesting. 4 years later, I'm not even sure why you responded, but it was just she could have been the perfect candidate for that job in 2020, and that crossroad just didn't hit at that time.
It's such a. There's a few things I want to touch on that you've brought up, but that piece I just had our weekly like sales call on our digital recruiter group program, and that's what I talked about, helping people get out of their head and stop worrying about yourself, start putting yourself in their shoes all day, every day, your prospect shoes, candidate shoes, and there a lot of recruiting candidates is sales, except for the part where they give you money. That's a pretty big difference maker. I think it's a lot easier to get attention because of that,
Sure.
but you still do have to close the role, right? That it both requires discovery. To
Mm-hmm.
your point, discovery is the name of the game with recruiting or sales,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where the overlap it really is the biggest overlap. Um,
Well, and
but
I,
in
and I think a
yeah,
part of that sometimes gets overlooked is the discovery on the job side, right? That
oh,
you've got a
completely,
client and
yeah,
hey, here's a job description, but really going through, okay, I see the words printed here. Cool. What are you looking for? Right?
exactly,
Right? Like what is the human element that fits into this? And culture is a big thing, and I'm sure we'll touch on culture in our discussion. But cool. I get the overarching of culture of Amazon. Love my Amazon Prime people. There's a culture of Amazon, but there are micro cultures within it. What is the culture in your organization, hiring manager person, that
yeah,
you're seeking to fulfill with a new person in this role? Like digging through those pieces. And I think with technology, we've all seen it. Job is posted and 2,000 people have applied. Cool. It's not 30 million, but I still have to narrow down 2,000 to get to one.
right.
And all those pieces got to come together.
Yeah, it brings up different problems.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the best candidate messaging comes from the roles that are qualified the best, right? I
Right.
mean, there's such a symbiotic relationship there. That's definitely one of the things that we teach is like you want better candidate responses, we'll qualify a better role, right? To your point, or at least get more details and more dig and all that stuff. And if you find that it's bland and candidates have questions for you, and that's what you got to get answered, and that's what you got to fix your messaging with, right? Kind of that piece of it. Uh,
And then there's
the
the balance of how much information do I share in my outreach? And it's like there's so much nuance to it, which is
Well,
Why?
just embracing it, right? To your point,
Right,
we talk about intentional volume, leveraging your LinkedIn and all that. Like, I'm sure you looked at LinkedIn now you're like, wait, I can fix up my profile, get some automation going and content, and have way more reach, but there's also way more noise, right? With way more
correct.
tools, now there's more noise, and so it's constantly refining. Okay, now how do we stand out from the pattern? Part of that is just putting yourself in people's shoes and kind of go back to that call of like, what is that manager going through, or what can you find from their post or from their headline, their about section, that you could reference back, right? I get people, I had someone ask me like, well, what do I say here? And I spent 45 seconds going through their profile and their posts, and I was like, why don't you refer to this and say that and all that? They're like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I hadn't thought about it that way. Because they were giving kind of a formal answer. I'm like, you want to go from formal to informal as quickly as possible, in my opinion,
Right.
with in the interaction, because that humanizes you, number one, and lets people know like you're not just like boogie person that's trying to take their money. It's just
Right.
like, oh, I'm talking to a normal, like someone that gets it. And
Right.
that, if you whoever can shorten that distance from A to B to, you probably like, oh, this person gets it, that's who wins, right? That's
The,
why I
the,
know we're going to talk about content and marketing
right.
and all that. That's the
Yeah.
purpose of
The
it.
sooner you
But
get from interrogation to conversation, the better off you are.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and I think that, and look, you don't have to do like LOL and like all this other stuff, right? With your prospects, but just be like, just get into that informal piece and just where people get comfortable. And some people may react well. Most people, your success, if you're gonna have a great year, whatever that definition looks like for you, you're gonna have those types of people, and way more people are still gonna quote unquote reject you.
Right.
Like, you're always going to happen, right? The old, batting, 300 gets you in the Hall of Fame. I mean, shoot, I think batting 250 now gets you in the Hall of Fame, right? In baseball,
Yeah.
with analytics and whatever else they got going on. But that's just like thinking about, like, you're always looking for your tribe. Like, how can you attract your tribe of like candidates that you can actually match, like clients that are actually going to view you as a partner, and vice versa, and like all that stuff. Like, if you can take all this volume opportunity and reverse engineer that, like, that's the magic. And I got to imagine that probably hasn't changed much from 30 years ago.
No, it really hasn't. Like I said,
Yeah.
it's still right human, right job, right place, right compensation, right culture, right opportunity at the right time. It's
Yeah. That's
and
it.
no matter what technology we come up with next, no matter how magical AI solutions, it's still two people got to like each other and agree that we can work together to get it done.
That's it. That's it. Well, to that point, let's talk about DBI, because I know you're launching that in 2025,
Mhm.
and I know we're recording 2024. This is coming out in 2025. Talk to me about that. You mentioned how transformative getting into the ed tech space was for you in your career. Why don't you talk about like kind of the purpose for kind of starting this, and
Yeah,
the why, and and all that good stuff.
yeah, love it. Great question. Started with this small company, NetChemia, about 12 years ago, and really, it was a unicorn, not necessarily the billion-dollar valuation,
Yeah.
but in the Kansas City area, education technology, not a lot of presence in Kansas City for that. Amazing leadership, great vision, process orientation, transparency, and learned so much from the founders of that organization, and was so blessed and lucky to be involved with everything that that company was going through, to start to get to know a lot of other startups in the Kansas City area, and the passion and the drive and the risk motivation of founders. Had never been around it. Grew up around corporate America. I'd never seen that
Yeah.
before. My father was an entrepreneur, but I didn't know it at the time, right?
Yeah. You know him as
Um,
dad,
yeah,
right?
it's just my
Yeah.
dad. It's what he did. I didn't know how all that worked, right?
Yeah.
Um, and just having an opportunity to meet with different leadership teams of startups, and we got funded, ended up being purchased by a private equity company, rolled into a larger organization, and I decided to take my leave. Went to a big engineering firm. Great experience, was not a fit for me. And a couple of mentors just kind of emotionally slapped me around a little bit, said, "You know what you love to do, go
Yeah.
do it," right? Um, and so where really the lightning strike came was got guidance on a little bit different business model of startups are cash strapped. They can't go out and spend 20-30% on every hire that they're going to make, nor do they have the internal team to
Yeah.
go build a human resources and recruiting team. So a lot of times it's just post the job and thumbs up, we'll get the right people and all
Post and
that jazz.
pray.
Right, exactly. You got it. And so I built more of a flat rate model that is very predictable spend for them. It's predictable revenue for me. And it worked. It worked. Did I leave quite a bit of money on the table? Yep. But it really wasn't about that. I can make a nice living and do all the things that we want to do, and keep companies growing. And really that's the key is I'm investing in founders and their companies and their passion to help companies grow. So it really the lightning strike was Netchemia, getting into that founders world, that entrepreneurial startup world, seeing the passion that they had and finding a model that I could help them scale with the people that they need. Um, and through a couple of different adventures, this has always been, maybe a side hustle. Sometimes it's full time, and built great partnerships throughout it, and just realized, you know what, I'm getting older. If I'm going to make a run at this, let's go like hell for 10 years. The model works. There's plenty of opportunity out there. Let's launch and let's go. So that's where we are today.
I love it. And you said something, well, a few very interesting things, but you said something, it works for you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the listeners is going to be 95% recruiters of this podcast. And with all the noise, all the tech tools that they get thrown at them, and now AI agents, and automation, and you got to market, you got to do this, you got to do that. I think people get lost of why they're doing this, right? In reverse engineering, what are you trying to accomplish with your
Mm-hmm.
business and your
Mm-hmm.
desk? And I think there's so much power in what you just said. Like, it works for us. Do I leave stuff on the table? Sure. But everyone leaves something on the table.
Right.
No one gets it all. And it's like, I think determining and reverse engineering that, like, to me, that's ultra important. Like, and I think it allows you to have clarity in how
Mm-hmm.
you build something and what you attack. I mean, what has that done for you, your business, even in your partnerships? Kind of knowing, like, okay, like, yeah, I could do more, but maybe I might not get more if I charge differently or switch some things up, and like finding what works for you. Like, how did
Yeah.
you kind of get there?
For me, it was, and I can't tell you exactly when it was or what it was or what, what the tipping point moment was for me. It was just a realization of, is it about making money? Is it about the price tag over a candidate's head? Is it about the price tag of an invoice that I get to send somebody that's an arbitrary 20, 25, 30% fee on it? No, it's about, I understand the founder's journey. I understand the emotions of mortgaging the house to pour all the passion into this better mousetrap idea that I have, and I need people to help me build it. It was understanding that and understanding, for me, helping somebody foster that dream and that vision to scale that company through humans. That's what it was for me. And you know, I do okay, right? I can pay for my kids' college tuition, knock on wood, right? I can pay for that. I can still do the Disney trip, right? All that kind of stuff. It's consistent income, and I think somebody said it to me once. CFOs must love you because they know they're getting a service and they don't know exactly what fee to pay every month. And they also know that they're getting 30 years of talent acquisition experience to help them grow, right? In this space, your founders are technical or salespeople,
Yeah.
right? I'm in software space, right? If they're technical, they don't want to waste their time recruiting people. It's not what they do, but they know they need salespeople to go build it. If they're sales oriented, they know they need technical people and product people and project managers and all this stuff. And no matter what the persona is, you're building a company. You're laser focused on revenue. And that's where I truly found the passion of, let me get you the right people. That doesn't mean the right resume. Part of it.
Well,
But it is the right person who understands what it is to work in a startup. Are they willing to take less cash for equity? Are you willing to give equity? If you're not, you're going to come up with some more cash. But it's the right person for that company at that time.
absolutely.
You might be 2 years in. The right person for you when you're a $900,000 revenue company may not be the right person for you when you're a $5 million company, when there's process and this right expectations. That's what it was for me. It wasn't about, oh, I can go out and hang my shingle and I can make all this money for myself and not in an agency. No, it was about, I've seen the fear in a founder's eyes and they don't know what to do next. I get it. Let me help you through this. And part of that conversation, to be brutally honest, is the analogy or the anecdote, not analogy, the anecdote that I use is, I need to hire a VP of sales. No, you don't. And here's why, right?
Yeah.
Like, I need a VP of engineering. No, you don't. You need a really good product manager, right? And just understanding where those pieces fit. And a lot of times it's like, hey, I'm not ready to hire. Good, right? You're right. Pump the brakes. Let's get you where you need to be. That's what I love. It's helping build companies. It's not about just plugging a body in somewhere.
Well, and the fact that you love that, I mean, that's the consultative part. That's a lot of the stuff that people, worked with some people, recruiters come to me, I'm struggling with this. I'm like, well, what do you know about their problems, about their industry? Like, what do you ever speak up to a prospect or client? Most people's issues are definitely afraid of their market.
Right.
A lot of it is they should be afraid because they can't hang with their market.
Right.
Right. So you got to go get the reps. You got to humble yourself and go make it happen. But you have that value add and you have that clarity, right? And everything you just said is, your ICP in and out.
Yep.
The CFO is not like a nice clear line item.
Yep.
That they're going to get the value, right? So that's going you lean into that, right? What are the advantages? What are the problems? Where's the market? In your competition, I would say maybe a little obtuse and not understanding and overcomplicating and using that to your advantage.
Yep. Yep.
That's
and I'm
all
not,
that stuff. Yeah.
I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. Agency and fee structures, it works. I mean,
It's
it does.
not
We've been in
it's
this
not
forever.
anyone specific, right? But
No.
it's just like if CFOs, because I hear it all the time from CFOs, well, we got to get rid of agency. What are they really saying they got to get rid of? It's these fees that come in and they see one person left after 4 months and it was a battle on the guarantee period. So they lump in all the fees against
Yep.
that.
Right.
Right. And it's just like, that's all it takes to change, they create the villain story, right? And
Right.
like someone's like the origin villain story is like, that's all it was. And now everyone else, ABC, suffers for it. I mean, that's something as simple as that.
That's a great point. We got to get rid of agencies. No, that's no, you're trying to shore up expenses here.
Yep.
But
you need people.
There's a cost to doing that. There's okay. So who's going to take on that work? Yeah, that's love.
And you're really tuned into that. And that's what I'm hearing. And I think for listeners, that's like such a key point. And that's why I'm being so adamant about it, because you've been at this, you grew up in it. And I know you don't take it for granted, but I know the list because I talk to the listeners and like, they're always, asking about that and wanting more clients and better clients. It's not like, but it's that piece you just talked about. Like, where can you position yourself in as an expert? Where do you feel confident to say, like, are you sure you need this? Are you sure you need that? Like, have we thought this through? I just onboarded a new client today and he's just started his agency and everything else. And he was like, what? I talked to this person, got a great Rolodex. I'm like, you have so much to build right now the next 3 to 6 months. Do not worry about anyone else. Like, I like almost like I forbid you from hiring. Like, you are not allowed to do that in a sense, because you have to figure out your stuff first and who you're going to be and your DNA as an agency owner and as a producer. And it's going to take all your mental energy to do that and to figure that out and have those conversations. Like, you have to respect that process because I need him to get to where you're at, where you understand truly where your value prop is and when you need to speak up, both advocating for something or being like, no, you're right. I think that's one of the most powerful things you could say to a client in recruiting is like, no, that makes sense. Like, you shouldn't hire right now. Or, yeah, no, you're right. This isn't the right candidate for you. I'll go rework and find someone better. Right. And they start hearing that from you, but you're not always a pushover. I mean, that's right. The balance. It's like, that's the sweet spot.
And part of that is just it's experience and
Yeah.
years and wisdom and getting comfortable in your own skin and being okay to be rejected, being okay with walking away from business. It all that comes. And I'm a big believer in finding your niche, and your niche usually follows right behind your passions. And you and
Yep.
it at different stages of life, you have different passions. Um, and I think a lot of times in our world, we are chasing revenue,
Mhm.
and we'll take on searches that I can learn that, I can figure that
Oh,
out, or this client is, I don't know if it's the best place for a candidate to go work or a prospect to go work, but hey, there's a fee at the back end of it, and we got mortgages to pay. I get it. But knowing who you are, knowing what you're good at, knowing when to walk away from things brings you gravitas with a potential client to be able to say, I can do this. I'm not comfortable doing that, but I can lead you to somebody who can.
yeah.
And I also think you get to a certain place in your career where you do have enough reps under your tires that you're okay saying, I got this.
Yeah.
And being able to truly consult with helping with their organizational development, helping with looking at who you have on the team now and maybe where we need to move some people into new seats on the bus. Maybe you need to help some people find a new bus.
Yep.
And like, you know, what I found in doing this pretty much full time in this space for 10, 12 years is the people that get you to X, not the people that get you to Y. And that's where I live. I live in that space of you've got to a certain point. Now it's time to scale. You need humans to do that. It's a different, being comfortable having that conversation of who is the best fit for you now, and understanding 3 years from now, they might not be the right fit for you anymore.
Well, and when you're saying that, like you clearly thought this through extensively and also lived it, but think about how much easier that makes your content strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of being like, well, what should I post about? Well, that topic is should be a theme that you hit every single week amongst other themes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And X and Y and the examples to this and how that, the product department, the engineering, the sales, like that's it, right? That's one of your themes for you and your business and marketing. And it provides that clarity, it provides that simplicity, which is so important in good sales and marketing. I say this all the time, good sales is boring. Like I don't I don't hop on sales calls anymore. What questions should I ask? Right? Or
Right.
this, it's like I know what I got to find out, and the person on the other side knows that about me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just like I gotta like figure out. I think I said it to someone earlier today. Like I'm probably asking a couple obvious questions to you, but keep in mind I've talked to a lot of recruit. Like I don't want to assume anything, right?
Right.
And she lights up and like is likes the fact that like I'm trying to understand what you said, the nuance, because I was like, it's those little things that can make all the difference. I want to give you the right recommendation, right,
Right.
and all that stuff, and that's why I tell people don't be scared of a niche because you can be even more of an expert than you realize, right? I mean, someone gets as a billionaire for having the screws to my chair or whatever, right,
Right.
or a new version of toilet paper wrapping or something like that small thing. Yeah, they say the riches and the niches. Now, if you're confused, if you've done a lot of different things, it might take a little bit of work. You might test out a little. You might not be ready to dial in right now, but if you're working towards that, right? Like I mean, it's so important because your confidence, your time, your efficiency. Like man, my sales call, I don't know about you, but like have gone so much better because it's just like it's so in or out like right away, and
Mm-hmm.
then you learn how to, but it took me 3 years. You learn the offers to have for each type of right prospect that can benefit for your transformation so people can meet you there, right? I learned from my market what the offer should be and the price point and when they should take it.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you did the same thing in recruiting with your flat fee and all that. Like if you just listen and ask the right questions and then just kind of always reflect, like you're gonna get all the answers that
Mm-hmm.
you need. But if you start with I'm gonna be all things to everyone, it's so hard to get the intel you need to build a profitable business and desk.
Right. If you're trying to be everything to everybody, you're going to end up being nothing to nobody.
Yeah,
Right. I mean, and our world has gotten so specialized.
yeah,
Right. There are. This is a gross general statement. There are no such things as a marketing generalist anymore. There are
No,
these little
there
tiny,
are, because they're fired right before they get to work with they work
right,
with me.
right.
Yeah,
Okay, there you go.
yeah.
There you go. So,
I know. Yes,
but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
specialization, and it's not just a sales professional, right? It's a B2B or a B2C or a D2C, and it's SaaS or it's product or it's whatever those pieces are, and and you got to find, in my opinion, to be good in this world, you got to pick out your slice that is functional and necessary in the market, that there's a wide enough area to play in, and just be good at that, right?
And be
And
there.
there might be a call that all I do is I recruit the best drive-through service people for the three largest fast food chains in the country. That's all I do, right? That could be something. Don't know if it is or not, but if you can brand yourself on that and you love doing it, that is your passion, then you never work, right?
That's
You just love what you do. Not that it doesn't get old, not that it doesn't get exhausting, not that we do 10 phone screens and 8 of them have been god awful, right? Like that's part of the deal. But I do think if you can focus on what you love to do, what you're passionate about in the industry, and just understand it, and then just be yourself and not think you know everything, you'll be just fine.
well, when you have the right systems, you can be yourself more. Is what I've
Yes.
learned. And having the Dripify, having the content
Yep.
going every single day, and something else I covered. I was like, I'm just myself every day
Yeah.
within business. I was terrified to be that 10 years ago.
Sure.
First year in sales at Aerotech, I was terrified of being myself because I didn't know anybody. I didn't have the experience, and now because I didn't have the systems, right? Because I was hanging on to those leads, I 1 to 2 leads and all that. But now there's so much volume,
Yeah.
intentional volume. I'm just myself. Like it's freed me up to be me. And in turn, people respond in kind. Now, if they
Yep.
respond by like, I don't ever want to deal with that guy. Hey, no problem. Or, hey, I'm never going to work with anyone else but Clark. Great.
We
Right?
live in an
Yeah.
economy of abundance, and it fluctuates. COVID, nobody was expecting that. There are ups and
Yeah.
downs. We get that. Um, but if you're consistent and comfortable with who you are, there is always work out there to be done. There are always companies that are needing our help. And you touch on something I want to pull on a string: authenticity. I think the world is thirsting for authenticity. In a world of screens and AI and different personas that can be projected in different media formats, I think the world and in our business is just so hungry for authenticity. Be who you are. You're not going to be best friends with everybody. You're not going to do business with everybody. But if you are who you are, you're going to find people who do want to work with you.
I couldn't agree more, and I'll take it a step further. You don't have to go to this level with me, but there's a overcorrection on the PC culture. The I don't make mistakes, all that. We're like too embedded in each other's lives now
Yeah.
that it's like, okay, everyone's a screw up, and that has now the baseline versus like in this and all that. People get over. It's just like, yeah, we all have problems. We're all flawed, and there's just I got typos in my stuff. I got whatever. I got things. I just don't really care because I'm gonna keep going. And there's definitely been a culture shift. I think. If you've noticed it in the last couple months in this country, there's definitely a tide turning. We don't want to get political on that, but the numbers showed that significantly in terms of how different turnouts and different generations and all that with historical stuff. So there's a change in the culture, and then just being aware of that. And you might have emotions and feelings on whether you like that or don't like that. That's fine, but you also have to just recognize what is, and that is happening. And people are going to interpret that differently, but it's being
No,
introspective and being able to reflect on that is important. I know you are, but like I'm talking
I agree
as
with
a
you
wider thing.
100%, and that we
Yeah.
don't need to go down this road very far. But it's there is a tide that is turned on authenticity, accountability, responsibility. Um, I kind of equate it to, yes, it's okay to not be okay. It's also okay to be okay, right?
Right.
Like just own what you're doing, take accountability for it, get help where you need it, be authentic, Everybody's flawed, and I think you hit it. Everybody knows everybody's flawed. Let's just admit it. I screwed up. Nobody
Well,
died. Here we go.
my personal example, because right, I always try to stick to what I know and what to be true, is my wife and I had our first date a little over 4 years ago. Now, both of us some had childhood trauma. A lot of people do, right?
Sure.
Doesn't make it unique. I won't share hers, but mine is I lost my parents at age 5. So she shared her story with me, was like looking at me like, is he gonna judge me or not? And I was like, don't worry, I got you. I shared my story. And instead of we both recognized about each other was we're both people that went through stuff, trying to sort it all out, but we want to just like move forward and build.
Yeah.
And that I think is a microcosm for what I've seen start happening this decade and going forward. If people are like, all right, a lot of trauma, social media, tech, personal, all that stuff, right? We're all addicted to our phones. Not everyone. I raise my hand. I am. That's fine.
Yep.
A lot of people are. But like, what? Okay, we put that behind us. How do we move forward? How do we build? And I think I'm so relieved that that's happening. People are trying to build things and have a mindset of building and producing in results and not just spamming volume or pretending you're working or whatever else. Like, does remote work here? Sure. Does a remote work here? Maybe not. Right? Do I trust a team of 23-year-olds to remote work? Maybe I don't. Right? Do I, all that stuff? Maybe it's
Right.
more people that have families and that have that they need, like just that nuance that you go back to. Like, instead of blame generalizations and all this, just like, let's dig in, let's get our hands dirty, and let's like figure this out, and like
Yeah.
let's build stuff that's cool, and let's
Well,
have
I mean,
pride in all that again.
if you
Yeah.
follow anything in sociology at all, pendulums swing.
Yes.
And I think we're now swinging back a little bit different direction, from, again, going into that authenticity thing. And we went way over one direction on let's just be completely open and honest about our mental health and our emotional health, which is healthy and it's amazing and I love it and it's great. Now we're kind of correcting back to now we know everybody's flawed. We are not judging anybody for it, but we got stuff to do. Are you getting the help you need? Good, cool. Now let's work on this project. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, and
So,
sometimes
yeah,
that's the best therapy is getting stuff done and
yeah,
just building, and just producing and creating. And that got me out of more at my own head than anything else, and just diving in and finding the right person and building a family, right? That really, that it forces your hand. And that
yeah,
I think that's a good pressure, and
yeah,
leading into that, not being scared of that, but embracing living life and not knowing. And that's, it sounds like, wait, they're talking about recruiting and LinkedIn. I'm like, yes, because it all matters. Do you have to take it so seriously? No, I encourage you not to. I don't take LinkedIn seriously. It's provided a ton of opportunity for myself and my family, but I still don't take it too seriously or
yeah.
myself too seriously. But I
Well,
take my work seriously. And I think that's the balance, right?
and
To,
I'll
to
bring it
strike.
back to nothing ever happens in inaction. Take
Correct.
action, do something, move the needle a little bit. And I'll try and wrap this up in a little bow on this particular topic is you've lost your job. COVID crushed your career. You got laid off. A company got purchased and you were redundant and you lost your job. Sitting around complaining about it going to get you nowhere. So be active. Make sure, like, update your profile, take action. Make sure you have a couple different versions of your resume, which is your story and your billboard. Take action. If you're interested in going to work for Dasani, I am not sponsored by Dasani, it just is sitting here, then find people to connect with at Dasani. Take action.
That's
You
it.
will feel better, advocate for yourself, get out there and get after it. And on the other side of this equation, on the employer side, take action. If somebody is reaching out to you, we're going to talk about students, we're going to talk about high school and
Yeah.
college students. Man, I'm on my soapbox on this
Yeah,
one.
get into it. Like,
Yeah.
please segue into
And
it. Yeah.
please, if anybody out there is in an employment role at a company and a high school kid or a college student reaches out to you, they have the intestinal fortitude to send you a completely arbitrary, maybe not the best written note on LinkedIn, and all they want is help, guidance, advice, an informational interview. Please respond to them. They are separating themselves from the masses. They are taking the risk to ask. Please, if we can do anything in this conversation, if we can convince one corporate hiring official to respond to a LinkedIn email that a student has asked for information, we win.
What have
We
you
win.
seen the benefits to that? Because you've given me a couple stories. I don't know if you want to
Yeah.
share one or two of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where have you seen? Because the natural response is going to be whether it's corporate agency. I'm so busy, right? So where have you seen right second, third order effects and steps like kind of playing forward
Yeah.
that have a
I'll,
benefit?
I'll give you a great story. I'll try and keep it under 2 minutes here as I best can. So I met an amazing young lady. She's a sophomore at the University of Kansas. I won't say her name because you'd be embarrassed. Um, Sophomore. She is studying business and data analytics and loves it, loves math. She doesn't want to be an actuary. She doesn't want to be an accountant, right? She just loves data analytics. And so she reached out, informational interview. What do I do? She was checking a box for a class. I'll be honest that it's
Yeah,
fine. But we started exploring what is she passionate about outside of numbers and analytics.
yeah.
She grew up playing soccer. She's passionate about the beautiful game. She is a manager for the soccer team. Like she is in it. And what I helped her identify was there's lots of data analytics in sports. We track everything that athletes do all the time. Like we won't even get into gambling and all the analytics around all that kind of stuff and fan behaviors and everything else. Right? Cool. So we identified some companies that she should reach out to. We connected with one great company in Kansas City and connected her with their head data scientist. That conversation resulted in the student getting an idea, hey, I'm going to do this little sidebar project on my own as a bit of a resume and a profile booster. Her questions got them to think about some things differently. So and again, that's where students, they don't know anything. They don't know what questions not to ask. But they got this company to think about, ooh, hadn't thought about that yet. That's an interesting take on fan behavior and team behavior and that kind of stuff. So that's just a little anecdotal that here's a kid who just doesn't have the context about where data is being analyzed in the athletics world, got her an informational interview, could end up in an internship somewhere or another, got the company to think about things a little bit differently. That's the serendipity things that I'm talking about is there's some quote about listen to the babes, right? They know what they're talking about even if they don't, right? Um, I think where we can be most helpful is giving the students some context. What is life like after college? What should I be thinking about in my college career? This is how we're applying what you're studying now. Universities are great. Got two of them in one right now, but it is a rote process to get there and students need to advocate for themselves, and I think companies need to be leaning into that's our future workforce. I'm not going to hire them tomorrow, but if I can give them a little bit of an insight, we all win in the long run.
Well, and to prep them, and such a great story because I mean, it's if I'm them, I'm trying to figure out how to hire her, just for showing the interest, and he said putting yourself out there and doing that. I mean, that's a great. It's like you know, baseball teams, sports teams, right? You draft talent or signing free agents, right? If you could draft and build your own, it's gonna be way cheaper. Overall, costs are not just you don't have to be cheap on compensation, but in terms of training and interview and job posting, you develop that funnel where it just kind of comes to you at graduation date and stuff like that as well, right? I mean, it's so intelligent that way. And I think I shared it with you. I haven't shared it with on the podcast, but in 2008, I was a middling B minus student in UMass. I'd have A plus one semester. I'd have F's all the next semester, depending on how much, if I lived with a kegerator or not. Um, and and I was like, all right, other people in this program are kind of ahead of me on the grades, and I was like, kind of all bummed out, talking to my dad somewhere junior year, and he's like, what about like football, like because I want to be the next Bill Belichick. And he was like, what about the football like video, right? You can't get into sales and marketing. That's what everyone wants. Like, who does the video? And I was like, I got no idea. And I walked in UMass football, which was FCS at the time. They were good FCS. They had Victor Cruz on the team at the time. They're terrible in Division One, but they were good for what they were at the time. Facilities, nothing special. But I literally just walked in. There was no security, no nothing. I walked in and I was like, "Where's the video?" I got the video guy's name off the website, and I just introduced myself. Hey, Bill, like I'm Clark. Like, do you need help with video? Like, what do you do? He's like, yeah, we film practices and games. Like, here's a camcorder. Give you a camcorder. You can come tomorrow and film. I'm like, great. And that's literally how I started. It was for free. At least that first day. I think they did end up paying me for like a little bit. I had to work part time. I leveraged that after I graduated senior year. I stayed for the summer. I helped him out and like learned like some of the software and all that. So I was able to put that on my resume. I got the attention of the United Football League, which is starting that year, desperately needed help. I bought this like job board emails or whatever for like $100. I got like 80 emails from all the coordinators in the NFL and college. So I just sent out copy and paste Gmail template to every single one of them. I had like 10 offers. Half of them were unpaid internships, but 5 of them were paid, right? University of Nebraska and all that. And UFL got back to me. It's actually Dean Blandino, who does like he's like the Fox referee analyst or whatever. He's the guy that hired me. My first job out of college hired me. I was paid $750 a month, but everything else was paid for. But I got the experience, and the guy at Florida emailed me. He's like, we're good right now, but we're going to have a spot in January. Email me after the bowl game. And so I just kept going. UMass, I drove my car down to Florida, worked for United Football League. I went back home, and then I submitted the application. I was like, I thought I was going to get rejected. I was like, nah, I can't go through this whole process. They want 2 years of experience. I have like a year and 2 months and all that. But I was just like, you know what? It was like the deadline, and I was not going to apply for that Gators role. And I was just like, if I don't do this, I'm going to hate myself the rest of my life. And I just like sucked it up. I did it. I applied. I somehow beat out like 80 people. I was like the final 3. He's like, because you called me first in August, you get the job. I'm like, whoa. Like, and that's how, and then next thing I knew, my boss was Urban Meyer and like that whole era. And then I met the person. That's how I got to LA. And then I started Aerotech in LA. And now we're here. Like, if I don't do those steps and ask my dad, what are some ideas as a college kid? How do I think this through? Right. And so it's like you could plant the seed, literally to your point, that shapes, like, it's so real. And I just had no context to your point. And you still had that peer pressure at college, high school. I'm not as good as that person and that, like, because you don't know enough to know that, like, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. And so, I don't know, I shared a longer story there, but you inspired me by sharing that.
But I think that the key to that whole thing is, yes, your father said, what about this? What about video? Nobody on this podcast even knows what a camcorder is, probably, right? but you took that and had the intestinal fortitude to walk into an office and ask and advocate for yourself. Communication skills and advocate for yourself separates you from 97% of the other people.
Way more than your GPA matters. No one's ever asked me for it. Ever.
I want all you students out there, keep your heads down, study hard. GPA is such a minimal part of it. If you can communicate effectively and if you can advocate for yourself, just another quick anecdote. There is another young lady who I'm very close to. She happens to share my last name. That's all she did. That's all she did. She advocated for herself. She demanded that the head of a department at university be her advisor. He said yes. She got connected with one opportunity with CBS and just advocated for herself from then on. Cold outreach, the head of talent development at a network, and has worked for Fox, worked for ESPN, worked for CBS, all because all she did was ask.
Initiative plus a good attitude will carry you a long way.
A very long way. And I can't tell parents, students, mentors, advisors, guardians, please have any kids that you can have influence on learn how to communicate. Just advocate for themselves. Do a 30-second elevator pitch. I went to UMass to do this. I am passionate about that. I'm most interested in learning about this. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do? If you can get your children to have that conversation with a grown adult, they will be fine.
Oh, especially right now, because so many people are struggling at that generation because of COVID or lockdown or phone and everything else. They haven't had to develop those in-person communication skills. So know
100%
that,
facts.
but maybe their digital is really good. So
Right.
have them hone in on the digital piece first, and then you can compensate some of the in-person when you get in the door and people kind of invest in their training and their upbringing, right? So
Absolutely.
I would say people harp on, oh, they don't have in-person skills, but leverage the digital to find an opportunity to build the in-person, right? And
Absolutely.
stuff like, so like, again, strategic advantage and lean into the strength versus fighting uphill, right? The uphill both ways and
Yep.
all that stuff. And I'm like
Yep.
that millennial that has, like, I grew up non-tech, but then had to adjust to tech towards the end, the high school and college, or the kind of interesting balance and
Yep.
kind of that bridge. And it's just, it is. And honestly, for people listening to this, it's like, if you didn't get that, you're like, oh, I didn't have that in college or right after, like, learn it now, because it's never too late for it to have a huge benefit
Well, and
on
just
you.
those basic
Yeah.
skills, right? It fast forwards to you as a somebody in a job search.
Yeah.
If we schedule a call, because I found your resume on LinkedIn, your profile on LinkedIn, we schedule a call, and I say, tell me about yourself. And you can't give me, if you're not confident enough to tell me just a little bit about who you are, what you've done, and why you're interested in interviewing for this role, right? We don't have anywhere to go from that. So, you know, just doing those little things to be able to talk about your journey, why you're interested in this role, and have a couple of questions to ask, you're good to go. And on the other side, on the recruiter side of the business, you better have a compelling story because it is a competitive labor market. That is not going to change. Have a compelling story about this is this company, this is this role, this is what I see as the upside. It's called recruiting for a reason.
Yeah.
There comes that tipping point of screening out to screening in, and yep, you're qualified. I like your communication skills. You have the experience we're looking for. Now I'm going to flip over to, will this person fill the job? You know, can they do the job? Will they do the job? Do we want them to do it here? And now I like Clark. Clark's amazing. He's got the videography, he's got the video editing skills. He knows football. He obviously knows how to work with coaches. So, what's it got to take to get you to go to work at Florida State? Let's talk about that and start that piece. It is such a nuanced thing that we live in.
It is, and I wasn't given the playbook to it. Even at started, I mean, it was just kind of, you just kind of have to dive in. There is parts of that to kind of just dive in. And when I hear overthinking or overanalyze, there's got to be perfectionism. I'm like, those are all excuses.
Yeah.
I've made all three of those excuses before. There's a lot of people growing up that wouldn't ever think I had was possible of overthinking. They
Yeah.
didn't think I had enough thoughts in there, or whatever else. But like, it is possible. Like, just knowing that if you're telling that script to yourself, it doesn't have to be that way, right? And it doesn't have to be some big thing. It's just like someone out there is doing it and they're succeeding.
Right.
So I think that was one of the things that helped me. Is like, someone out there is winning at this thing that I want to win at.
Right.
And I might be losing today, but how do I figure out how to win at it?
Mm-hmm.
And that reframe, I didn't have to figure it out that day, but it at least allowed me to keep going and stay consistent. And the worst times in my life were when I avoided things or got complacent or stayed away from it, to your point, to action. I read a great C.S. Lewis quote this morning about that like, the stuff happens. You don't test yourself without action. Right, like I think his quote was like, they didn't know the German army was tough until they started fighting the German army, right? Like, you got to like do things to like
Right.
figure out that reaction, and I think just stop being scared of the reaction and embrace it. Start with baby steps, and you never know
And
what's
start in
possible.
some safe spaces, right?
Yeah,
Like, do you know your neighbor across the street well enough to hey, you
great
know,
point.
my aunt and uncle are going to be home, they're going to be visiting over the holidays, and my uncle is in this interesting industry, I think from what my mom told me he does. Right? Hey, Uncle
Ask
Bob,
them.
ask him,
Such a
ask
good
him,
point. It's such
right?
a good
Like,
point. Yeah. Go ahead.
so, and then, you can flip it over to the, as you're a candidate, right? Like, man, please just you help yourself. My great diatribe on this is nobody truly knows what your company does. Like everybody has a pretty good idea of what Amazon does. But please on your profile, just give me a little bit of a bullet of, you know,
Man,
we manufacture coats for porcupines. Cool. Like at least I know what business
I
you're
got more
in, man.
questions than answers, but yeah, it gets me started.
But I'm going to
Yeah,
talk to that person. The other got to figure out how we got into that business, right?
yeah,
And I think the other one on this, so that helps yourself quite a bit on that space of it. And then I think the other one that I keep hearing over and over and over and over is culture,
yeah,
right? Candidate side, what does culture mean to you? Like everybody has a different version of culture. Is it an execution over attendance culture? Is it a remote work? Is it an accountability and responsibility and measurement culture? Is it a data-driven culture? Um, it, what does culture mean? Are you looking for a company that has a giraffe in the parking lot? That's culture, it's environment. But what does that mean to you? And then on the other side, when you're recruiting, is be able to define the overarching culture and then the micro culture. The overarching culture of this company is X, but in the sales world, in this division, their culture is really defined by this. Like being able to talk about it. Culture is on everybody's mind right now, but understanding what the difference is and being able to define that, I think, is key. And that goes all the way back to that authenticity and that judgment piece that you're looking for is like, what are we trying to match up here? And if
yeah,
we can't talk freely about it, it's also okay. I don't know, but I can get the answer for you. Like that's an interesting
yeah.
question, right?
A- Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. No,
It,
it's all such good points, and I guess I mean, I just looked at the clock. We've been at it for an hour, so uh, and I'm trying
when
to
you
think the best
find
way to
two
wrap.
people that are passionate about this industry, we
Yeah,
can
we
talk
can
about
keep
it
going.
forever.
I was like, oh man, I was like, hey, that time went by quick. We just kept
Yeah.
kind of going, and I think I got a message from my wife that I'm yelling. Uh, it's not yelling; it's passion,
It's
honey.
passion.
Um, what the culture thing is so true because I think back to an interview I did with ADP, which I completely bombed my second interview with them back in the day. It was the best thing that happened to me because I would have been a terrible fit for that culture, the type of
Hmm.
salespeople, but I was perfect for the aerotech culture, especially in the light industrial division. I've always remembered that as like I was so distraught after the ADP interview because my cousin worked there and I thought I was going to get in and all that. And it was so like I was a heightened state, right? Because I was looking for that base salary and I was a crappy door to door telecom sales job and I thought I blew it forever. Uh, but then Aerotech was just like, no, we need you. Like, you're the right person. My manager was like, I want to work with someone with your attitude, your style. And I don't care that this job is kind of whatever and it's like up and down numbers. Like, I see it. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. Right. And like, I didn't know them at all, but I knew me. And I was like, this is just where I'm at. And that was enough. And I didn't know that. And they're like, Pete, now I was very rough around the edges. They had a lot of work on me, but like that's what they were looking for. Looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, that is like I was a perfect misfit, and that
Yeah,
is recruiting. It's the perfect misfits,
absolutely.
and like that's it
But did
just
you know, let me
yeah
ask, did you know at the time, as you were going through that process with ADP,
no
you
no
didn't know at the
no
time
no
that
but
that
go
was a,
ahead go ahead. I'm
no,
assuming
no,
I
like,
didn't know anything. Yeah.
was there something in your gut or in your soul that were you trying to talk yourself into that?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I was like, oh, I had a president's club at my. They're like, what's that at this company? I was like, I don't know. They don't have a president's club. Yeah, my sales friend told me to put that on there. Like stuff like that. And then I get rid of it for the Aerotech, and it just felt better. Or Aerotech didn't even care about my numbers at previous places. They were like, could he talk to candidates? Like that's what they were trying to figure out. Versus could I sell a fax machine, which I would have been terrible at,
Right.
right? And so, or whatever, payroll services or whatever. It's so interesting that they're kind of adjacent but so different, right? And they're like, well, this guy can talk to people, but products bore him, and that's it was so true. I didn't care about selling internet or a product. I thought people were way more interesting.
Yeah.
Uh, And so I was a better fit. I had no idea at the time. I knew in my gut it wasn't. I knew I enjoyed that tech interview process better than ADP. I'm not saying it's a better company. I've heard great things about ADP. I know great
Right.
people that work there. Those people are hunters. I'm not truly a hunter. Hence why I built Digital Recruiter, and I like automation and content because I don't love cold outreach. I
Yeah.
want to create as many warm outreaches and warm interactions as possible without having to lift a finger
Yeah.
to do all that. So like that's my style. Like I respect the crap out of people that are pure hunters, but I also typically do a lot of things on the client management side, typically way better than they do. But they get themselves in the roles where they hand off the client management side. That's perfect, right? I think my superpower a lot of times was that client candidate management. So how do I build a hunting process around that?
Yeah.
Right. And that took me about 15 years of my career to get there. So like I'm sharing all this, we're going over time, but I don't know if I've ever gone that in depth into it, but like that's what it takes. And did I know that at the time? I had no idea. Like I had no clue. But like I don't know, that's the journey, and it kind of sounds like hearing your story over like 30 years. Like you kind of ironed out that in 2012, 20 years into it was a big turning point for you, right?
Yep.
So it is
Absolutely.
kind of the never too late, right? And like that whole thing, I think I'm just trying to say like have patience and be present. And then when I get those things down, good things start happening.
Yeah. I'm going to agree with you 1,000%. Be patient, not complacent.
Yeah.
Take action. And we are entering more and more of a world in our space, in the recruiting space, where there's a lot more data analytics. There's a whole lot more assessments out there where we're trying to mitigate risk with all of these tools.
Yeah.
No matter how
I just gotta say, my wife just messaged me. She goes, "It's yelling, not passion."
so we're trying to mitigate all the hiring risk. It still comes down to a gut instinct
Yeah,
on the hiring side and the candidate side. And if you're not feeling, if you walk away from an interview and you're like, that's not it, it's okay to trust that.
yeah.
It's okay to trust it on both sides of that equation.
I spent 10 minutes for you what you just said in 30 seconds, much better than I did. That's exactly it. But you can create volume if you're job searching. Like, hit me up if you're listening to this. Like, I created like a 2-page Google Doc on how to set up your profile, automation, content strategy for job seekers. Right? It's. I have the same free email course for recruiters looking to build their outreach on LinkedIn. It's just tailored for job seekers.
Mm-hmm.
Like just do it. Like just act like just make it happen. And that way you can at least supercharge it and get some momentum going so you can create more opportunities for yourself so you can pick the right one.
Absolutely. You got to get the
And
at bats. You got to get
that's
the at
it. You
bats.
got to
That's
get
all
the
it is to it.
ABs.
Yep.
What's the last thing you got for the listeners? What's the last takeaway?
Uh, be authentic. Be true to who you are. Follow the
Yeah.
passion, which sounds very trite. I have the advantage of age and miles and wisdom on this, but people said if you could have started earlier doing, on the journey you're on now, no. To be honest, no, because I had to go through, learn the lessons, learn the processes. I'm a big believer that the universe puts opportunities in front of us, and sometimes it's the right one, sometimes it's the wrong one. The universe put that opportunity in front of me 12 years ago. I followed my gut. I went away from my gut a couple of times.
Yeah.
Be authentic to who you are. Advocate best for yourself. You'll be just fine.
Yeah. Just embrace it. Embrace the ride. You only
Embrace
get
the
one
ride.
shot at it, and and try to have fun with it. The only constant is change and things coming up and all that stuff. As I say that, my car's at the shop right now, getting worked on, and all that stuff. Just when we had to fix it, someone else's, all it's just. I was just like, okay, that happens. I work remote, no big deal. You know what
Yeah.
it is? Like it is like just there's things that are really big, and then there's things that are and you just have to be able to kind of figure that out.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, yeah, what you can do to kind of transform and impact other people's lives, from as you said, students to just posting and getting yourself out there, and it's just kind of having fun with it. So Doug,
Got to enjoy
yeah,
the journey. You said it. We only got one. Might as well do something we love.
that's it. Have fun with it.
Exactly.
Great conversation.
Amazing.
It's been great to meet you the last few weeks here and talk and share for you to share your insights. This is super valuable. I think maybe one of the longest episodes we've done, and it felt very organic. Flew by.
Yeah.
So
No.
Well,
I'm
cool.
so
Well, thank
humbled
you.
that you invited me. Enjoyed the conversation, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
Awesome. Well, make sure to connect with Doug on LinkedIn. We'll have his LinkedIn URL and website, and we got the brand launching in January, DBI2 Consulting. So check that out. Connect with Doug. Tell him hi and how much you appreciated his insights in this episode. All right. Till next time.
All
We'll
right.
see y'all.